All right, welcome back. We are on to the Miami Hurricanes. You just heard us talk Florida Gators. We're moving south, heading down to Coral Gables. Lots of doings down in Miami this offseason with the hiring of Mario Cristobal, replacing Manny Diaz. Everybody seems to be very excited about Mario coming back home. Remember, Mario is a member of the Hurricanes back in the glory days of the 80s, and no better guy to talk Miami Hurricane football than Ian Hest. Ian's a sports reporter covering the Hurricanes. He's been covering college football for 12 years now. And Ian's going to be able to give us a full-blown breakdown of the Hurricanes and the whole coaching situation. So welcome to the Florida Football Insiders, Mr. Hest.
Thank you, Jason. Glad to be here.
Very good, very good. How's the weather down there?
A little hot and humid, but that's how we like it down here.
That's right. I know. I'm based in Tampa, so I'm right there with you, man. We get it all. We get it all too. All right, so let's get right to it. Mario Cristobal comes in from Oregon. The first question I have is, what's going to be different about Mario Cristobal? You know, Miami likes to stay within the family to some degree. What's going to be different with Cristobal than you had with Manny Diaz, with Randy Shannon, with Mark Richt, who all had Miami connections? What seems to be the difference here with Mario?
Well, this sort of seems like, when you first start dating and there are some, relationships that you like that are going well, and then you find the one and you're like, whoa. Right from day one, you go, this could be something special. That's sort of the situation that Miami feels like they have here with Mario Cristobal. The other ones were good for the time. It fit what you were looking for. It fit your type, if you will. And this one looks to be something special. Mario, if you remember, was always the one who got away. It always looked like Cristobal was going to be there, and it never really fit, whether it was FIU, then Oregon, all the situations regarding it. With the thing right off the bat that you see with Cristobal over the others is the energy level is just through the roof. The sheer volume that comes from practice, the sheer energy that comes from press conferences even. You can see that this man bleeds orange and green. It is, all about the U family. And that's not to say that it wasn't like that for the other guys. It was just reflected in a different way. And this is very much about your homecoming, your guy that you feel your family, your La Familia, as we say down here, and people are feeling a lot better about this the iteration of this version of a prodigal son really coming back to Coral Gables.
Yeah, like I said, he's I know part of the negotiation was he's really adamant about demanding some financial improvements in facilities and such. Talk about what they've kind of agreed to do. Maybe they haven't done it yet, but it's part of the plan.
Yeah, so the indoor practice facility was a project that was going through, and obviously something that was hurting Miami on a national scale for quite a while. You look at programs around the SEC, even now in the ACC, some very impressive facilities. Miami was very behind the eight ball on that. The improvements that were made to the stadium, the lease there. I know there was talk about the Ruiz family with wanting a new stadium, and this sort of pops up every now and then. They do have the lease through 2032, so for the foreseeable future, they'll be there. There was, to weight rooms, to locker rooms, just a lot of investment made that was long overdue. But someone like Mario coming in and recognizing that as a priority, I think was different from coaches past. It was always on the wish list. It wasn't a demand. And that, I think, is a little bit of the shift in culture here with him.
Talk about the Miami has been really active in the NIL process. Talk about all that stuff and how much that's helped, whether it's getting transfers, high school recruits, whatever it is. Just talk about how active they've been in the NIL process.
Well, how could you not sell Miami, right? It's such a tough sell to bring people down here. Who would ever want to spend 4 years of their college lives living in South Florida? So the NIL situation really, there's no program in college football that benefited more from the NIL. And I think that everybody in the back of their mind always kind of knew that Miami would be one of the prominent programs that would benefit from a situation like this. They do have the natural born location. They do have the limelight, the beaches, the girls, the electricity of Miami. And that sort of lends itself to the ability to bring about a lot of promotion and a lot of opportunities that players can find outside of the field. Miami has also been known in the past for, let's just say, wanting to provide as much of an experience to their college athletes as possible. Sometimes on the good side of things, sometimes when they get in a little bit of trouble.
Now Luther Campbell can do all that stuff legally.
Exactly, right? So this sort of cleanses and kosherizes it a little. But I think that they have found themselves in a very good situation with benefactors that want to help the program. Miami, we always sort of gloss over this, but Miami is a small private school.
Right.
And people oftentimes forget about that compared. They don't have the large booster funding that, your big time public, especially your land grant universities have. And so this sort of evens that playing field for them. So for them to be able to take advantage of it, maximize that potential has really been something nice if you're a Canes fan here.
Yeah. All right, let's get on the field. Miami was 7-5 in 2021, 5-3 in the ACC. Obviously, Cristobal replaces Manny Diaz. Coaching staff-wise, they bring in Josh Gaddis, the OC from Michigan, which a lot of people like that move. The old grizzled veteran Kevin Steele is the defensive coordinator. He seems like he's been at every school in the Southeast in the country in the last 25 years. He's the DC. They are retiring the turnover chain from all indications. So
about time, right? A lot of people would say it's about time for those.
Talk about just the coaching staff, and is it a coaching staff that people are going to, that recruits and transfers are going to be eager to want to be coached by?
Yeah, that's actually been a very pleasant surprise, if you will. Miami also not known for spending a lot on coaches in the past, and this really this staff that Mario's put together is really unlike a staff that the Canes have seen in quite some time. You even look at like Charlie Strong, who's the coach of linebackers as well. There is talent that is up and down this staff. In recruiting, they've done a very good job on the recruiting trail. Mario made that a priority as well. So this is a dynamic coaching staff. But the one thing that you hear time and time again from talking to players during this fall camp is how much they're learning. These schemes are very complex. And sometimes you get a little nervous. And when we first started to hear that, that was like, okay, is this a little too much too soon? But you see from, maybe 3-4 weeks ago to where they're at today, and that knowledge, that comfortability in the offense, especially I would say on the defensive side of the ball, is where you see the most between the start of fall camp and now, where they've really started to show their versatility schematically, which from a coaching standpoint looks very interesting to me.
All right, let's start on defense. You mentioned defense. Lose a lot of guys. They bring in 6 kind of transfer guys that they think are going to be key contributors. The area that only 11 turnovers in 2021. Again, that's not Miami. When you think Miami back in the day, you think turnovers, big hits, things like that. Not a lot of that last year. They were second worst in the country in red zone defense last year, which again is hard to believe, a place like Miami. Just give me your overall sense of the defense and where you see some strengths and where do you see some weaknesses.
Yeah, you mentioned big hits that Miami is known for, right? Ray Lewis, Jonathan Vilma. We think of these guys. There's 130 teams in FBS football. Miami ranked 130th, dead last in tackling last year.
Wow.
That was the biggest issue. They probably lost, I would say 2-3 at least games just simply because of tackling. You go back to that Florida State game, especially, pretty much given away because of bad tackling. So that's where right off the bat you'd say number one thing needs to improve. Across the board on the defensive line, this is a really good Miami defensive line. Fans like to do those 2 deep, so I was going through my 2 deep on the roster as we're getting ready for Bethune-Cookman here coming up, the first game of the year. And Miami kind of could start 9, maybe 10 guys along the defensive line. It's that deep. It's that versatile. They've got some big guys like really up front. They've got some quick, versatile guys like a Chance Williams that's coming back. Kelly's just they've got some real freak athletes on there. So I really love the defensive line. You asked about a weakness. If there was one, I probably would say it's in that linebacking core. We mentioned the tackling. They're not very deep there as well. The good part about that is they're probably at most going to run maybe a 2 linebacker set. Sometimes, most of the time, a 1 linebacker set with a star position, sort of that hybrid that they like to run against, especially against spread offenses. So, the tackling and the linebacking core probably where you would look, but again, they're going to rely a lot on that defensive line, and a lot on their safeties and defensive backs. So not a lot of need in the middle there.
Yeah, again, you and I both know this. When Miami's been great over the years, great defensive linemen and great secondary guys, safeties, corners, Sean
And
Taylor,
that's what this is. Yep.
Mike Rumpf, those kind of guys that are elite kind of players. They've always had good linebackers, but they, other than Ray Lewis, they've had Lewis and Vilma. I get it, but the defensive line, the Saps, those kind of guys have been the guys when Miami's been great. They've dominated up front for sure. So, special teams wise, I'm a special teams guy. I'm a former kicker at FSU back in the day and all that stuff. Talk about Miami special teams: kicker, punter, punt return, kickoff return game.
Yeah, and that would, the kicking game was a bit of an up and down year for Miami. I think that they're hoping for more there. They have one of the best punters in Lou Hedley in the nation, I'd say. And so I think that there is cautious optimism there. I wouldn't say that anybody is saying that it's a cause for concern, but
Right.
it is always one that in the back of your mind, you said it best, kicking in Florida State, right? We all know that it can win you games and cost you games. So I would say that they come in with the hope that it doesn't become an issue, and they feel a little bit lukewarm about it as of right now.
All right, listen to the Florida Football Insiders. I'm Jason, along with Ian Hest. Ian covers the Hurricanes down in Miami. Doing a great job giving us a full breakdown of the roster, the coaching staff, and all that good stuff. Let's go to the offense. Everybody's super excited about Tyler Van Dyke. People think he could potentially be a Heisman Trophy candidate. Again, when Miami's been great when they've been great, they've had a great quarterback, and they've not had a great quarterback in a while. A guy who they really think could be an NFL kind of player, big NFL player. Just talk about Tyler Van Dyke and his development last year and what they really expect out of him moving forward in the new offense.
Yeah, you say development last year was really trial by fire. He got thrown in there and handled it about as well as I think, probably even better than you ever would have imagined someone handling that situation. And so the thought around him is that it can only really, the sky's the limit for this kid. He really is a special talent. The way he his motion, his throwing motion, I've never seen someone just so smooth. And sometimes with guys like that, you can get your sort of Eli Mannings that float a ball a little too much. His is just very calm and composed. It's a very smooth motion. He really throws a very nice deep ball, getting a little bit more control of the offense. Obviously, another new offense. You always worry about that with quarterbacks early on in their collegiate career, especially switching coordinators from years 1 and 2. But it seems to have a good control of it. And let's be honest too, if, knock on wood, nothing happens, because like you said, could be a Heisman contender, could be a future first-round draft pick in the NFL. But they do have Jake Garcia waiting in the wings that is just as good as Tyler Van Dyke. So really no concern that he has to be that guy nonstop every single down throughout this entire season, which is a luxury item really right now for the Canes.
Looking at Josh Gaddis last year at Michigan ran the ball a lot. Obviously, they're spread off, and maybe that was a function of the quarterback not being a very good thrower of the ball. Overall, who knows? Will this offense fit what Tyler Van Dyke does well as far as throwing the ball?
I think so. Again, he throws a great deep ball, and they really took it. I mean, you go back to like that Pitt game; they had a little fun with him really stretching his legs down the field. I think that really the ability for them to move vertically, Miami, whenever their offenses have been a little frustrating, is when they go sideline to sideline, not north-south. They have a tendency to try and get a little too flashy. So a good balance is always what you want. Unfortunately, right now for the running backs in Miami situation, they only have 3 healthy scholarship running backs right now. Been hit by the injury bug a little bit. Trevante Citizen will be out for a while. Don Chaney. We'll see if he's back by Texas A&M. There's some people are on the optimistic side, some people are on the pessimistic side of that.
Right.
But Jalen Knighton will really be the workhorse for now, I think. And so they're not very deep right now at running back, which, like we said, is also a staple for the Canes when the Canes are rolling.
And one thing again, remember, if you don't know, fans, if you don't know the philosophy of Mario Cristobal, he's an offensive line coach, so he wants to have a rough and tough offensive line, rugged running game. They've always been known for physicality, kind of the Alabama style of offense. So it'll be interesting. O-line issues. He brought in 2 Oregon transfers with him, 2 offensive linemen from Oregon, so very familiar with the scheme and the philosophy and all that stuff. So talk to me about the offensive line and kind of Cristobal's influence there.
Yeah, it's funny because that might be the place where you point to and go, well, this is where Mario's going to help out the most, right? Because Miami has, well, let's see, the past decade and a half had some pretty shaky offensive lines, and that's really been the crux of some stymied quarterback careers. Go back to Ja'Cory Harris, for example. Probably if he was behind a better offensive line, what a guy like he could have done. Brad Kaya, guys like that throughout the year. They haven't had good offensive lines. Mario, we all know, knows how to play offensive line, and even better, knows how to coach offensive line. And so there's a lot of excitement behind that, where basically the position of weakness that's been your crux, especially offensively, for the past decade, 2 decades, really could wind up becoming a position of strength. Their main left tackle, Zion Nelson, did come into fall camp wearing an air cast, so that raised some eyebrows. He is expected to do well, but they do have a lot of versatility. I really like Jalen Rivers. He can play all 5 positions across the offensive line, which will be really helpful to sort of settle down a new offensive line. You mentioned the 2 transfers, right? So there's a lot in flux there, but with Mario coaching and really taking that time with that unit, it's not as dire straits as you would have expected with it being another coach.
Skill player wise, wide receiver, tight end. Again, you and I both, know when Miami's been great, they've had the Andre Johnsons, the Reggie Waynes of the world out wide, Shockey, Olsen at tight end, those kind of guys. Do you see any of those kind of elite players, even if they're young? Do you see those players on the roster?
Yeah, wide receiver is actually kind of a question mark for Miami right now, primarily or possibly because they have such good tight ends. So let's start there. Will Mallory comes back again. He was the main target last year, probably going to be your main target this year. They got 3 really great tight ends, Elijah Arroyo, also Jaleel Skinner, who right off the top, looks unbelievably a freshman that's going to go places for sure. In the wide receiver room, though, there's a lot of questions. It's probably Xavier Restrepo, who's your number 1 wide receiver, but he's a slot guy. So you don't have those guys on the outside like your Andre Johnsons, like your Reggie Waynes that you were talking about before, that are those guys. So it's a question of who's going to step up and be that guy. A lot of eyeballs on Brashard Smith possibly being that guy. But there really is an opening here for guys to show up and say, take the reins of this and say, this is going to be my role. Because if there was really one glaring thing, it's those 2 outside wide receiver spots. No one knows who's going to be out there.
All right, let's get to the schedule. Again, looking at the schedule, if they can navigate a couple games, they've got a chance to have a big year. Obviously, the huge showdown in week 3, they go to Texas A&M. That's gonna be a huge national game. Mario's first kind of out non-conference showdown with Jimbo. If they can get out of that game somehow with a win, again, tough place to play in College Station. They got a pretty good schedule up until November. In November, you got Florida State, you got Clemson, you got and Pittsburgh. But if they can get through Texas A&M, they got a chance to be, at worst case scenario, 1 loss heading into November. What your thoughts on the early part of that schedule, especially the A&M game?
Yeah, so Miami is favored in all but 2 games on their entire schedule right now. That's at Texas A&M and at Clemson, like you mentioned, to end the year. And so you have to look at that right off the bat and say, okay, this hopefully would produce a lot of wins. That Texas A&M game is the one circled. That they're a little fortunate that it's week 3 for them now this year instead of Alabama, that was right off the bat. That sort of snowballed into Michigan State last year too, where they could never really get it going in their 3rd game then. So that Texas A&M game, a lot of people are going to be excited about it. One that I think Miami looks at as a chance to, the joke is always made, is Miami back? That's your is Miami back game. And whether or not they win, I think nationally would matter less than locally. Locally, if they want to win this, I mean, obviously, but I think that, a moral victory would not do well in Miami, whereas nationally you might see, those talking heads be like, oh, Miami's getting competitive again, things like that. So going further down the schedule, you have to look at trap games for them. Virginia, a lot of people have as their dark horse, so I'd circle that as probably their dark horse, upset loss game in the ACC. And if they want to win the Coastal, that's pretty much, I think, probably the game that it'll come down to.
I'm with you. I mean, I see very possibly a 10-win season here. Even if you lose to A&M and Clemson, every other game on the schedule is very winnable, and they'll probably be a favorite, like you said, with Vegas and with the the football power index guys. They'll be a favorite. And again, Miami, you got to win the games you're supposed to win. You can't lose. You can't slip up to the Virginias, to the Wake, those kind of teams that you should be better than, especially home games. Miami has lost a ton of home games in the last decade, of games that you would think, man, how are they losing to those guys at home? Talking about the fan base. It's a fan base pretty excited about. Obviously, I know they're excited about Cristobal, but that's a fickle fan base. If they lose a game or two, they shouldn't lose. They are very fair-weathered fans down there for the Canes. So talk about the fan base and the commitment to the process, because again, you're not going to win a national championship in 1 year down there. It's going to take a couple of years probably recruiting with Mario to really get them back to the level they want to be at.
Yeah, there is a lot of optimism. Surprising, coming off a 7-5 team that was invited to a bowl, decided not to go to one last year. But like you said, the schedule is favorable, and they think that they really can attack it. The fans are excited. They believe that they have their next, big head coach that's going to be here for a long time, that Miami really hasn't had, forever. I mean, Jimmy was only here for a couple of years. Howard Schnellenberger was only here right. for 4 or 5. So you even go back to the glory days that they haven't had that, but they feel like they have that now. So there is a lot of excitement around it. Hard Rock Stadium's starting to feel like a home. That really changed a couple of years ago when they made that big run against Notre Dame, against Virginia Tech. It sort of started to feel like home and a fortress, especially with the roof now. It gets pretty loud over there. So I think that from a fan base perspective, this is one of the most exciting off seasons Miami's had, since 20 years,
right.
Maybe. So I really think that they're going to show up. Like you said, can they ride the momentum? If they lose to Texas A&M, do people turn right off the bat, or do they give them a little bit longer of a leash?
Right.
That's always the question with Miami fans. You always know that everything's turning south when they start flying planes with banners over the stadium. That's normally the cue that things are not going well. So as long as the planes stay out of the sky, we're probably good for now.
All right, let's get to Cristobal. One more comment about Cristobal on the field coaching. One of his kind of things that he kind of got takes hits on is his in-game coaching coaching. He's only got a 62-60 record. I know he's been at FAU, but he doesn't have the greatest head coaching record in the world as a head coach. Just talk about his in-game coaching, in-game management decisions. Go for it on 4th down, timeout usage, things like that. Is that something that you've seen that makes you nervous as a covering the team? How does that dynamic play into things?
Nervous, no, but I definitely something to keep an eye out on. And I think Mario would be fair in assessing himself on that. He is an honest guy, and probably would say that he's always getting better. He's always trying to learn. Obviously you don't want too much on the job learning here in a situation like this.
Right.
I think that in more recent seasons at Oregon, he had improved on that. No coach is perfect. But I don't want to sort of set a narrative that this is an issue heading in. I don't think that anybody is necessarily thinking, oh, well, if not for a called timeout in the first quarter, there could have been a 2-minute drive at the end. There's nobody real feeling about that. But yeah, I mean, I think that there have been instances that you've seen, you go, okay, well, let's see how we could have done this better. Yeah,
I gotcha. Do you sense the, again, first couple games, opening games, do you sense the, how does he think things are going progressing wise through camp? I mean, he's not going to probably tell the truth, probably to the media, obviously, but do you get the sense of confidence that he thinks he's got a pretty good team?
Coaches not telling the media, not telling us the truth. I've never come across that before. No, I mean, I think that you can only hide so much, right? We get to watch them, and you can see the improvement from the start. You can see the improvement with your own eyes. So there is palpable understanding of what the coaching staff has been able to do in this short period of time, and there is a sense of confidence that trajectory can continue to improve over the course. They start with Bethune-Cookman, Southern Miss. I think both games that they think really can allow them to ease into this a little bit more.
Right, right.
If I was a betting man, I'd probably say that they would have preferred this Texas A&M game be at home and the return one be at A&M, just simply with how, scheduling and everything going at Clemson being at the start of a new regime. So from that perspective, I guess you could say, well, they have to institute things a little quicker, but from all intents and purposes, looks like it's fine. It doesn't look chaotic. It doesn't look like this is everybody scrambling like a chicken with their head cut off, trying to figure out what's going on. It does seem like there is organizational management going on in Miami.
Well, Ian, great work, man. Awesome analysis. Again, we're going to check back in with you very regularly during this football season. Florida Football Insiders, great insight. Tell everybody where they can find your work online and on social media.
Yeah, I freelance around the area, so you can catch it pretty much everywhere you get your college football, covering Canes for quite a while. So you can follow me at Twitter at Ian Hest, IANHEST.
Awesome work, man. I appreciate the time, and we will be back in touch. We'll probably definitely have you on that week of that Texas A&M game to preview that. So keep up the great work and appreciate the time.
Sounds good, Jason. Thank you.
Have a great one.